Nobody in that forge realized they were mocking the most dangerous man who ever stepped into a fighting pit. A silent blacksmith hammered iron, enduring insults without a single sound. His silence was not weakness. It was discipline, forged in blood and sharpened by suffering. Around him was just noise, until that silence became heavier than his anvil. And that weight was about to crush 23 men. The Iron Horse Forge sat at the edge of Dustwater, a cattle town that thrived on Cruelty in 1883. The town belonged to one man, Clayton Reeves, the cattle baron who owned every ranch, every water right, every blade of grass for 50 miles. His enforcers, the Reeves Riders, collected tribute from every business. Where they rode, dignity died. But today, something different walked among them. At the forge stood a man who did not speak. Silas Drake, 42 years old, shoulders like granite, arms scarred from 1,000 burns. His face carried a jagged scar across his throat. Most assumed he was born mute. Nobody knew the truth. Clayton Reeves arrived on horseback with 6 of his men, boots heavy on the wooden planks. He kicked over a bucket of water Silas had prepared for cooling metal. "Morning, freak," Reeves sneered. "My horse needs shoes. Make them shine, and maybe I will not burn this shack down." Silas gestured to the work already lined up, 3 orders ahead. Reeves grabbed a red-hot poker from the forge and pressed it against the wooden post near Silas's head. The wood smoked and burned. "I do not wait for cripples. You work for me now, or you work for nobody." Silas stared at the burning wood, then slowly nodded and pointed to the horse. The men laughed as Reeves shoved him toward the animal. One enforcer, a brute named Trent Maddox, spat tobacco juice on Silas's leather apron. "This mute dog probably cannot even read. Hey, freak, bark for us." The other men howled with laughter. Silas bent down, picked up the horseshoe he had been working on, examined it with care, then set it aside and selected fresh iron. His hands moved with precision, each hammer strike perfectly measured. There was something unsettling about those movements, something too controlled, too practiced. One younger enforcer whispered to his partner, "That blacksmith moves like a fighter." His partner shrugged. "He is just a mute cripple. Probably got his throat cut running from a real fight." Before you discover how a man without a voice became the nightmare of 23 armed riders, take a moment to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling me which country you are watching from. United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia. I would love to know where my audience is tuning in from right now. Buckle up, partners, because what Silas Drake is about to unleash in Dustwater is not just revenge. It is judgment, written in broken bones and shattered pride. Stay close, partners, because the streets are about to witness something the West has never seen before. The legend of the silent fighter will rise from the ashes of forgotten history. Dustwater was a town that fed on weakness. 4 dirt streets, a train depot, a bank that laundered Reeves' money, and a saloon where his men drank for free. Law had visited once, 5 years back, but the deputy had been found hanging from the water tower with a sign that read, "Justice is expensive here." Since then, Clayton Reeves ruled without challenge. He controlled water access, forcing ranchers to pay tribute or watch their cattle die of thirst. He took land through forged documents. He claimed first rights to any woman who caught his eye. The town survived by looking away. Silas Drake had arrived 3 months ago on foot. No horse, no wagon, just a canvas pack and a wooden box of blacksmith tools. He rented the abandoned forge from Widow Chen with hand gestures and 3 months' rent paid in gold coins. He spoke to no one because he could not. The first week, curious townsfolk asked where he came from. Silas would write in the dirt with a stick. "Far away, does not matter." When they asked about his scar, he wrote nothing and returned to his work. That first month, Silas repaired wagon wheels, shod horses, mended broken tools. His craftsmanship was exceptional. Every nail driven true, every joint fitted perfectly. Ranchers began to prefer his work over the town's other smithy. This made Clayton Reeves take notice. One evening, Reeves sent 3 of his men to deliver a message. Bull Henderson, a mountain of a man, kicked open the forge door. "Reeves says you pay him half your earnings, or we shut you down permanent." Silas was shaping a plow blade. He set down his hammer, picked up a slate board he kept for communication, and wrote slowly, "I pay rent to Widow Chen. That is all." Bull snatched the slate and smashed it against the anvil. "You pay Reeves, or you pay in blood." Silas looked at the broken slate, then at the 3 men, then picked up his hammer and returned to work. Bull grabbed his shoulder. The moment his hand made contact, something changed in Silas's eyes. A coldness, a calculation, a flicker of something that made Bull instinctively step back. "Boss wants an answer, freak," Silas wrote in the dirt with his finger. "Tell your boss I have already paid enough in this life." The 3 men left confused, but they reported the defiance. Clayton Reeves did not tolerate defiance. The next morning, Silas found his forge trashed. Tools scattered, his anvil pushed over, his water barrel emptied. A note was nailed to the door: "Pay or leave or die." Silas cleaned up slowly, methodically, writing everything with the patience of a man who had rebuilt his life from worse ruins. He did not leave, he did not pay, he simply worked. And that night, in the privacy of his small room behind the forge, he opened the wooden box he had carried across 3 territories. Inside were 2 leather wraps for hands, a small journal filled with sketches of fighting techniques, and a faded newspaper clipping from 1878. The headline read, "Silent Demon wins 18th consecutive death match. Undefeated champion Silas Drake retires after brutal final fight." Beneath the headline was a drawing of a younger man, powerful and whole, standing over a fallen opponent. Silas traced the image with a scarred finger, then closed the box. "Some men are born fighters, others are forged by necessity." Silas Drake had been both. What terrible past had stolen this man's voice? Keep watching. The fighting pits of San Francisco were illegal, brutal, and wildly profitable. From 1875 to 1878, they operated in warehouse basements where men fought without rules for the entertainment of the wealthy. No gloves, no rounds, no mercy. Fighters entered. One man left conscious. Silas Drake had been a dock worker, strong but unremarkable, until the night his younger brother Tommy was pressed into a fight to pay off gambling debts. Tommy was 17, skinny, terrified. Silas tried to take his place, but the fight organizers refused. They had already taken bets. Tommy lasted 90 seconds before his skull was fractured against the wooden floor. He died 3 days later without regaining consciousness. Silas returned to the pits the next week and demanded entry into the fighting roster. They laughed at his grief until he broke the jaw of their gatekeeper with one punch. He fought his first match that night and won. Then he fought again and again. For 3 years, Silas Drake became the most feared pit fighter in California. He developed a style that was efficient and devastating. No wasted movement, no showboating, just precise strikes to joints, throats, and temples. Men twice his size fell. Trained boxers could not touch him. He earned the nickname the Silent Demon because he never spoke during fights, never taunted, never celebrated. He just fought, collected his purse, and left. But the pits demanded spectacle. Promoters wanted drama, wanted fighters who played to the crowd. Silas only wanted to punish the world that had taken his brother. In his 18th fight, he faced Marcus the Bull Thornton, a former bare-knuckle champion who had killed 2 men in sanctioned matches. The fight lasted 7 minutes. Silas broke Marcus's collarbone, shattered his knee, and was choking him unconscious when Marcus's brother, Luther Thornton, jumped into the pit with a knife. The crowd erupted in chaos. Luther slashed wildly. Silas dodged the first 2 strikes, but the third caught his throat. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to sever his vocal cords. Silas collapsed, blood pouring from his neck. The pit doctors saved his life but could not save his voice. When Silas woke 3 weeks later in a charity hospital, he learned that the Thornton brothers had burned down the warehouse to destroy evidence, killing 12 people in the fire. Luther and Marcus had fled to Texas and were never caught. The pits were shut down. Silas was left broken, voiceless, and filled with a rage that had nowhere to go. For 5 years he wandered, taking work where he could, learning blacksmithing to give his hands purpose beyond violence. He tried to bury the fighter inside him, until 6 weeks ago when a traveling merchant mentioned Dustwater and the cruel cattle baron who ruled it, and mentioned that Clayton Reeves's head enforcer was a man named Trent Maddox, whose real name was Luther Thornton. The past had found Silas. Or perhaps Silas had finally found the past. He packed his tools and walked to Dustwater with one purpose: to finish what had been stolen from him 5 years ago, his voice, his brother, his peace. Luther Thornton would pay for all of it. Morning came with heat that turned the ground to iron. Silas woke before sunrise, as always, and prepared his forge. The coals were still warm from yesterday. He added fresh charcoal and worked the bellows until flames danced. Widow Chen brought him rice and beans wrapped in cloth. "Mr. Drake, people are saying Reeves is planning something bad for you. Maybe you should leave town for a while." Silas took the food and wrote on a new slate he had purchased, "I am not leaving. This ends soon." The widow frowned. "You cannot fight them all. They are killers." Silas wrote again, "So am I." She left, shaking her head. Silas ate slowly, watching the street. Reeves's men were already collecting from merchants. One of them, a wiry man called Jake Hollins, shoved an old Chinese shopkeeper who came up short on tribute. The man fell. His daughter screamed. Nobody intervened. Silas set down his food, stepped outside, and crossed the street. Jake was about to kick the fallen shopkeeper when a shadow fell over him. He turned to find Silas standing there, arms crossed, staring. "What do you want, freak? You looking to get hurt?" Silas pointed at the shopkeeper, then made a gesture for Jake to help him up. Jake laughed. "You giving me orders? You?" Silas did not move, did not blink, just stared with those cold eyes that had watched men die in the pits. Something in that stare made Jake nervous. "Fine. Old man can get up himself." Jake turned to leave, but Silas grabbed his wrist. The grip was iron. Jake tried to pull away and could not. "Let go, you mute bastard." Silas squeezed. Jake gasped as bones ground together. He dropped to one knee. "I will kill you for this." Silas released him and helped the shopkeeper to his feet. The old man bowed gratefully and hurried away with his daughter. Jake scrambled up, clutching his wrist. "You just signed your death warrant." He ran toward the saloon where Reeves held court. Within minutes, word spread. The mute blacksmith had put hands on one of Reeves's men. By noon, everyone knew blood was coming. Silas returned to his forge and continued working. He shaped iron as if nothing had happened, but his hands moved faster now, with urgency. He was preparing. Townsfolk whispered behind closed doors. Some said he was brave. Others said he was foolish. The blacksmith, who could not speak, had just declared war on the most dangerous man in 3 territories. That afternoon, Clayton Reeves himself arrived at the forge with 12 men. Trent Maddox, the head enforcer, stood at his right. Silas was hammering a horseshoe when their shadows filled the doorway. Reeves spoke with quiet menace. "I have been patient with you, blacksmith. Too patient. You embarrassed my man. In my town, that is a killing offense." Silas set down his hammer and picked up his slate. He wrote carefully, then held it up. "Your man, Trent Maddox. His real name is Luther Thornton. He killed 12 people in San Francisco 5 years ago. He cut my throat. I came here for him." The forge fell silent. Trent went pale. His hand moved toward his revolver. Reeves frowned. "Trent, what is he talking about?" Trent swallowed hard. "Boss, this man is lying. I do not know him." Silas wrote again. "Fighting Pits, 1878. You stabbed me after I beat your brother Marcus. Then you burned the warehouse with people inside. I was there. I survived." Reeves looked between them. "Trent, is this true?" Trent's face hardened. "That life is dead, boss. I left it behind." Silas wrote one more line. "You stole my voice. I am here to take everything from you." Reeves let out a cold laugh. "So this is revenge? An old grudge from pit fighting days? You came to my town to settle a score?" Silas nodded. Reeves smiled. "Then let us settle it proper. Tomorrow at noon, Main Street. You and Trent. No weapons, just fists, like the old days. If you win, you can leave town with your life. If you lose, we bury you in the dirt." Silas wrote quickly. "If I win, Trent answers for what he did, and you leave this town alone. Forever." Reeves laughed harder. "You think you can dictate terms? Fine. If you somehow win, I will consider your request." He leaned closer. "But you will not win. Trent was a pit fighter, too, and he still has his voice to scream with when you break." Silas held his stare, then nodded once. The deal was made. Reeves and his men left. Trent glanced back one last time, fear flickering behind his bravado. That night, the town buzzed with rumors. The mute blacksmith was going to fight Trent Maddox bare-handed in the street. Some called it suicide. Others remembered old stories of San Francisco pit fighters, legends of men who fought like demons. Silas did not sleep. He sat in his room, wrapping his hands in the old leather straps, stretching his muscles, remembering the patterns. The fighter he had buried was rising to the surface, and tomorrow Dustwater would see what silence had been protecting them from all along. Noon arrived with scorching sun turning Main Street into a furnace. Shopkeepers closed their doors. Families watched from second-floor windows. The brave stood along the boardwalk, keeping distance. Silas walked from his forge wearing only trousers and boots, his scarred torso exposed. Every muscle was defined, a road map of old fights. The scar across his throat gleamed white against tanned skin. He stopped in the center of the street, rolling his shoulders, loosening his neck. Clayton Reeves emerged from the saloon with Trent Maddox and 20 men. They formed a wide circle, ensuring no escape. Trent stripped off his shirt, revealing a fighter's build. He cracked his knuckles and grinned. "I should have finished you in San Francisco, Drake. This time I will not make that mistake." Silas said nothing, could say nothing. He simply raised his fists in a classic bare-knuckle stance, left foot forward, hands high and tight. Reeves raised his hand. "No rules. Fight until one man cannot stand. Begin." Trent charged immediately, throwing a heavy right hook. Silas slipped it, countered with a short jab to the ribs. Trent grunted and swung a left. Silas blocked and drove a knee into Trent's thigh. The crowd gasped. This was not a brawl. This was technique. Trent reset, more cautious now. He feinted left and kicked at Silas's knee. Silas checked it with his shin and punished the opening with 2 rapid punches to Trent's jaw. Blood sprayed. Trent staggered back, shaking his head. "You still got some fight, old man. Good. I want you to suffer." He rushed again, this time grappling, trying to use his weight. Silas pivoted, used Trent's momentum to throw him into the dirt. Trent rolled and came up swinging wild. Desperation was setting in. For 3 minutes they traded blows. Trent landed heavy shots to Silas's ribs and face. Silas absorbed them, countered with surgical precision, a jab to the throat, an elbow to the temple, a knee to the solar plexus. Each strike was calculated, efficient, brutal. Trent's face swelled. His breathing became ragged. He grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it at Silas's eyes. Silas turned his head, but some got through. Trent tackled him while he was blinded, raining down punches. The crowd roared. Silas covered up, weathering the storm, then bucked his hips and reversed position. Now on top, Silas unleashed. His fists were hammers. Each punch carried the weight of 5 years of silence, of a murdered brother, of stolen justice. Trent's nose broke. His cheekbone cracked. Blood pooled beneath them. Reeves shouted, "Enough! He is done!" But Silas did not stop. He grabbed Trent by the throat, the same throat that still had a voice, and squeezed. Trent's eyes bulged. He clawed at Silas's arms, trying to scream, but no sound came, just choking, gasping terror. Silas leaned close, and though he could not speak, his eyes said everything. "This is for Tommy. This is for my voice. This is for every person you ever hurt." Trent's struggles weakened. His face turned purple. Just before he lost consciousness, Silas released him and stood. Trent collapsed, broken and breathing, but alive. Silas turned to face Clayton Reeves. He made a gesture, pointing at Trent, then at Reeves, then sweeping his arm toward the edge of town. The message was clear: take him and leave. Reeves stared at his fallen enforcer, then at the silent blacksmith standing over him. For the first time in years, Clayton Reeves felt fear. This was not a man. This was a force. "You think this is over?" Reeves pulled his revolver. "I have 20 men here. You just made it worse for yourself." Silas did not move, did not flinch. He simply stared, fists still raised, daring Reeves to escalate. The crowd held its breath. Then, from the crowd, Widow Chen stepped forward. "Mr. Reeves, you gave your word. The blacksmith won. Honor it, or everyone here will know you are a coward who hides behind guns." Other voices joined hers. "He beat your man fair. You made the deal. Let him be." Reeves looked around at faces that had always feared him, now finding courage in the presence of one silent fighter. His control was slipping. He lowered the gun. "Fine, Trent is done, but you," he pointed at Silas, "you leave this town by sundown, or I will hunt you myself." Silas picked up his slate from where he had left it before the fight. He wrote slowly, then held it high for everyone to see. "I am not leaving. You are. If you are still in Dustwater tomorrow, I will challenge every one of your men, one by one, until none of you can stand. Then I will come for you." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others gasped. Reeves's face turned crimson with rage. "You are insane. I will burn this town down before I let a mute cripple run me out." Silas wrote again. "Try, but you saw what I did to your best man. Imagine what I will do to the rest." He turned his back on Reeves, the ultimate insult, and walked back toward his forge. The crowd parted like water. Reeves aimed his revolver at Silas's back. His hand trembled. Every eye was on him. If he shot an unarmed man in the back after losing a fair fight, his reputation would be destroyed. Even his own men were watching, judging. He lowered the gun. "Get Trent to the doctor. We are leaving for the ranch." His men obeyed, lifting the unconscious enforcer. As they rode out, Reeves looked back one last time. This is not finished, Blacksmith. But in his heart, he knew it was. That evening, Dustwater celebrated quietly. No one dared make too much noise in case Reeves returned. But the blacksmith who could not speak had done what law and guns could not. He had stood up to the tyrant. Silas returned to his forge and resumed work as if nothing had happened. His face was bruised, his ribs ached, but his hands were steady. Widow Chen brought him water and medicine. "You could have killed him," Silas wrote. "Death is too easy. He has to live knowing he was beaten." She smiled. "What will you do if Reeves comes back?" Silas wrote his final message of the day. "I will be ready. I am always ready." The sun set over Dustwater, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere in the hills, Clayton Reeves drank whiskey and plotted revenge. But in the town below, people slept better than they had in years, because they knew that silence was not weakness. Sometimes it was just a fighter catching his breath. Silas Drake, the mute blacksmith, had proven that a man did not need a voice to speak the language of justice, and that language, written in blood and broken bones, was understood by everyone. The legend of the silent fighter would be told for generations. And that is how it ended, folks. A town once ruled by fear now stands on its own 2 feet, protected by a man who could not speak but whose actions roared louder than any words. Silas Drake did not just defeat a bully. He reminded Dustwater that courage does not need a voice. Sometimes the quietest man in the room is the most dangerous. Some say Clayton Reeves never returned, that he sold his ranch and fled to Mexico. Others swear Silas tracked him down months later and settled accounts completely. Maybe he still works that forge, hammer ringing against anvil, a silent guardian watching over the weak. But one thing is certain. Where tyranny plants its flag, legends rise to tear it down. And maybe, just maybe, when you hear the distant clang of metal on metal carried by the desert wind, you are hearing the echo of a fighter who never needed words to change the world. Now tell me, partner, if you could not speak but had the power to stand up for others, would you risk everything like Silas did? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know if you would find your voice through action. And if you have made it this far, riding with me through every punch, every stand, and every moment of silent defiance in this story, thank you. Your support keeps these tales alive. Before you ride off, do not forget to hit that like button if this story stirred something in you. Subscribe so you never miss the next legend from the untamed frontier. And tell me from where in the world you are watching. It amazes me how far these stories travel across borders and oceans. Until our next story, partner, keep your courage sharp, your honor unshaken, and remember that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to stay silent and when to fight. Because out here in the West, legends are not born from words. They are forged in fire. Ride safe and may the spirit of the silent fighter live forever in your heart.